KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
And good morning and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Reverend Patty Fink, and Laurent Landis will be back with us next week.
And it's afternoon, by the way.
It is afternoon. I always say good morning. I just got into that habit when we were on Wednesday mornings, and sorry, it's
You were scarred.
I was. Well, it was traumatic.
It's been 20 years since we were on Wednesday mornings.
Yeah, getting up at 5 a.m. to do this show for a while, it was traumatic. So good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. And we've changed your on-air name just a little bit. You've been the late Patty Fink for years. Now you're the late Reverend Patty Fink.
I am now ordained. I can do that.
Patty is ordained. She spent the last 5 years in seminary. Is that how that happened?
Oh, yeah. Just before I clicked the submit button.
Okay. Tell us what that's about, your reverendness.
Well, actually, my cousin, Kathy in Austin, and her partner, Connie, got married this past week in San Francisco. And in order to prepare for that, they asked me to officiate. And so, actually, in California, you're not required to be anything in terms of credentials in order to marry officiated.
You just have to register.
Right. But I wanted to go ahead and do something different.
You wanted
I
official.
want nothing to stand in the way of their officialdom. So, I went online and got a certification, and it was really wonderful because I don't think it was really needed, but it was really, really great and a personal thrill for me to be that person in their marriage. So, in their wedding. So, it was really exciting. It was
and you
beautiful.
did prepare for this already because you've done another wedding.
I did one with you, in fact.
Yes.
With Knon and Rafik.
Mm-hmm. And that was the wedding where the Methodist and the Jew the Baptist and the Jew married the Methodist and the Muslim.
Yes.
It was perfect.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful, actually. It was a lot of fun. So now she is the late Reverend Patty Fink.
Absolutely. And we had a really wonderful experience. They had planned this for a very long time and been together 24 years. And it was actually a double wedding. There was another couple who'd been their best friends for a very, very long time. And they've been together 31 years. And they were from Alaska. And so I officiated for Kathy and Connie, and then the other couple had a nephew who was just a delight. They were all a delight. And it was a beautiful beautiful setting at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a huge rotunda. It's like a giant gazebo. And so it's open on all sides. And it was a freaking wind tunnel when we went to do the wedding. And so we're all like scrambling to keep our papers together and the chairs from blowing over. And the musicians lost their music at one point. And, but it was really, really, really wonderful. And what I thought was really striking, several things about it, the whole experience was in terms of like LGBT equality, was there were a lot of tourists that were around who very respectfully watching from the outside of the rotunda. And I thought that must have been a cool experience for many people who may have been visiting San Francisco and happened to go see the Palace of Fine Arts that day at that moment. That was really kind of cool.
Especially if they happen to be from a state like Utah or Oklahoma.
Yeah. Exactly, and where we have movement, we'll be talking about in marriage. And then two, the other really wonderful thing that really struck me, and I didn't think it would, was when we went to turn in the marriage certificate, the marriage license. And that was the moment. It's really official. It's real. It's here. It's
And you
ours.
said, my church is real.
Well, no, but it's, this is equality to the, in motion, and it was really wonderful.
And what is the name of your church in case people would like to join?
American Marriage Ministries.
The American Marriage Ministries. So this makes you no longer Baptist.
I guess that's true. I guess that's true. I have a packet of information about my church at home, so I'll be learning more about it as I go. But it was really a great experience, and we were in San Francisco. What a gorgeous town! What a fun town, and a beautiful. So many things to do and see, places to go. And if you're done with San Francisco, if you could possibly max out on San Francisco, you cross a bridge and you see another great place. It was really great.
You visited Harvey Milk's old camera shop, which is an HRC store now.
It's an HRC store now.
Which was real controversial when they did it, because I think people wanted that store preserved as kind of a shrine. And HRC is preserving the store. In fact, they have that Trump Doy window with Harvey looking down on everybody.
Right. Kind of watching over the street in his shop.
But some people were annoyed that it wasn't preserved just as a museum, I think. But you went in?
Oh, yeah.
And what was it? It's a store now.
It's a store.
Yeah, with HRC merchandise and other information, I'm sure, about what's going on.
But there was great, kind of elevation of the relationship that HRC has with the Harvey Milk Foundation, with the GLBT History Museum right there, which I didn't get to visit, but I plan to when Aaron and I go. And I thought it was well done. It was done tastefully. I was a little concerned too, and I'm a big HRC supporter. I mean, I did that for 7-8 years.
You know what? You can support something and be concerned about something that a group's doing. That just means you care.
Exactly. And we ate at Harvey's, the diner on the street, and we were all very eager to ask if there was some affiliation with the Harvey Milk Foundation, or if they were just exploiting his name. And there was a tight relationship there. They had brochures on the tables that explained the memorabilia, and the photos were on loan, basically. And so it was a really wonderful experience. And we were staying about 2 or 3 blocks off of Castro, so it was within walking distance, and you got a feel for everything. And a great moment, we had quite a few people in our rental house, and we one evening watched the movie Milk. And it was really, I got so much more out of it.
It's different when you're there.
Right. And knowing exactly like these places and these, these feelings. And City Hall in San Francisco.
It's a magnificent building.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's like, it's really equivalent to, rather than a city hall, it's more like a state house.
It was beautiful, and it's magnificent from the outside, and then you step inside. And it's just glorious, just amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so now that you're back, you and Aaron, have you registered your house as a parsonage?
No, we have not. I don't know about that.
I don't see why you should be paying taxes. You really shouldn't be paying taxes on the convent you're living in.
We're such a convent.
Is Aaron signed up to be one of your nuns? Or
no.
not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I think she's a Reformed nun.
Well,
she claims to be a recovering Catholic, so.
Well, there are all types of nuns in your religion. It's an open,
it is
affirming and accepting religion.
Yes, and it's universally pro equality. So that's the important thing.
And that's the overriding thing that all of your different houses of worship require of them.
Exactly.
I see.
Exactly.
Okay, good. We have a bunch of marriage cases this week.
Oh, we've been hit by what, 4? 4 rulings.
Yeah. Colorado, what happened? I'm just randomly picking one of them. Do you have that one, or do you had one of the others in front of you?
Oh, I have Oklahoma. But
go ahead with Oklahoma then.
Oklahoma had a ruling that...
this was really the big one this week, I guess.
Right. The Oklahoma resides in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. And the 10th Circuit had already ruled on Utah, which is in the same circuit. And Oklahoma is now gotten a sort of a sister ruling in the same way that Utah had one, and that's where the ban should be lifted.
Now, we kind of expected when Utah came out that they'd just issue one ruling for both states. They didn't do that. We thought, okay, so what's taking so long with Oklahoma? The original decision that the district court issued was about 60-some-odd pages. This one was over 100. So it didn't just rule on the ruling. It just went on. And again, it was a 2-to-1, just like Utah was, so it was not 100% for. But they did address different things in this ruling. If you got to read any of the ruling itself, there were a number of things that they, specifically to Oklahoma.
Right, and I downloaded it, and it's huge. And I read the summary of the ruling, but I want to read the rest of it because I'm really curious. And when you line it up with Utah, where else did they go?
Well, one of the places that I thought was very interesting about this one was that they were talking about how Oklahoma's big thing was marriages for procreation. And they said they didn't just dismiss that, but they went into other laws where Oklahoma has gone out of its way, especially in things like adoption, to legitimize marriage for people who were not going to procreate in the normal traditional way, things that had to do with artificial insemination, things that had to do with adoption, things that had to do with one person in a marriage adopting the other person's children.
And we've talked about that on the air, in fact, about how you could have legal adoption in Texas and drive through Oklahoma, and it would be suddenly you're legal strangers, and then you continue on and you pick up your adoption legality again, which is insane.
Of course it is.
It's just insane.
So anyway, what the 10th Circuit did was they didn't just say, oh, well, marriage, you don't just get married for procreation. They took Oklahoma's what they were claiming and tore it apart. I mean, they shredded it. They cited all kinds of laws. They cited all kinds of ways in which Oklahoma has gotten around, ignored, and said, no, marriage is not just for procreation. But it is a place where you raise kids. And if you're going to raise kids, then you want those kids raised by a married couple. So you're doing everything that you can to get kids into relationships where there's a married couple, except for this group of kids. So they not only said, well, it's not really, they said your argument is bigoted and stupid, and I mean, in just about those words. It was an interesting ruling, the way that they took that part of it and spent so much time on it.
Wow.
Much more than the lower court. So it was just an interesting ruling, I thought. But it was 2-to-1, and this one judge who was hearing it, no, marriage is for procreation, and the state
that's just been
states'
so
rights, and states have a right
everywhere, though. This procreation argument, because then that came from Prop 8, where the witness on the other side said, well, I read it on the internet. That's basically that argument is over, and I don't think the Supreme Court would even entertain it. Because there are people who get married all the time, who are clearly not intending to have kids.
Right.
You talked about your dad marrying late in life. They're not having kids. Right. Lots of people choose not to have kids.
I mean, with my father,
marriage is for everybody.
Yeah, my mother died when she was about 57. My father got married about 5 years later, and she was older than he was. So he was in his 60s. She was late 60s by the time they got married. But she couldn't have kids originally, and it wasn't that she didn't want them. She desperately wanted kids and couldn't have kids. Her first marriage was not considered invalid either. I mean, just because you're a heterosexual couple and you want kids, well, that's not procreating.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. If they want it that way, then, you get a 5-year marriage license and you have to go to the Division of Motor Vehicles and Marriages. You renew your license, and if you haven't had kids, I'm sorry. If that's what you're really saying, that marriage is just for procreation, and we void those marriages, and, sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I'd like to see? The ones that are arguing, and I forgot which, it was Florida in theirs. Again, an interesting decision this week.
It's a state district judge, not a
and the
court.
ruling there only applies to Monroe County, which is the Florida Keys. So, which is perfect because starting Tuesday, unless the injunction gets in place in time, Key West will have marriages starting Tuesday.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. Brian and I were thinking, hey,
we could go to Key West.
Right. The thought of driving up to Tulsa, not so exciting.
Or Little Rock.
Yeah, Little Rock.
Yeah.
But Key West.
It's got to be Santa Fe, San Francisco, or
Key West.
Key West.
Provincetown too.
Yeah.
So, but the thing in Florida that they were arguing was states' rights, and states have a right to set the agenda. Basically, the judge in that one said, you don't have a right to vote away the rights of a minority.
Which has been the fundamental issue across this country, in 2004 and all of the intervening years, 2005 in Texas, where they were voting on our rights and denying our rights in a state constitution and wanting to do it in the federal constitution. It's just abhorrent to me.
Ted Cruz just introduced something last week to revive that whole constitutional thing.
Oh, please.
So, well, we elected him to do something useful. He hasn't gotten any legislation passed yet since he's been in the Senate, not one single piece of legislation. So, one more piece that won't get passed. Doesn't have a chance for even a hearing on this one. He has had a couple that have had a hearing, but.
Well, I have to add though, everywhere we went, and we did a lot of errands and stuff before the wedding. Everywhere we went, before, during, and after the wedding, people were just open arms, excited, and congratulatory, and they were very genuine. And it was great. I mean, Kathy at one point went in to buy a pair of shoes, and they gave her a scented candle as a gift because she was about to get married. It was very exciting. And like the checkout guy at Target was, all excited that they were getting married, and congratulations, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Well, but isn't that what you would say to a straight couple getting married?
Exactly.
So why wouldn't you say that to a gay couple who's being married? It doesn't affect you in any way. But you can say something nice and make somebody's day, and you come back to Dallas and you're saying it on the air on the radio, how nice somebody would who you didn't know treated you.
Yeah,
What's
it was
so terrible?
Refreshing.
What is so terrible about it?
Exactly. It's so refreshing because we don't have that in Texas. We don't get greeted like that everywhere we go,
Yeah, and this is getting off topic a little bit. We need to stop for a break in just a second. But demonstration downtown on Friday, I drove by it, and there were about 100 people, 50 on one side of the street, from Dallas in favor of what Clay Jenkins is doing and taking care of kids. About 50 people on the other side who, most of them were not from Dallas. And when I say not from Dallas County, coming from one of those other counties to protest what Dallas is doing. None of your business as far as I'm concerned.
We're doing it in Dallas County.
Get
back over there.
You had an experience in San Francisco about that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was out shopping, one day I spent a whole day, really an afternoon in the Castro, kind of by myself, just getting the feel of the place, and was talking to lots of different people, and they said, "Oh, you're from Texas, and from Dallas? You're from where that really wonderful man is."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, he's ours."
I have been trying to get Clay on the show. He is impossible to get in touch with right now. I tried all week.
We'll see if we can get Dr. Garcia, Dr. Elba
one
Garcia.
of them. She was also at that meeting. So.
Right.
We need to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Reverend Patty Fink.
If you're going on summer vacation but aren't planning on taking your old car with you, why not donate it to the KNON Vehicle Donation Program? Just call 877-KNON-AUTO and we'll arrange everything from picking up the vehicle to providing the necessary paperwork. Your donation will help support KNON. 877-KNON-AUTO or on the web at knon.org.
Hi, I'm Cleve Jones, and you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with the late Reverend Patty Fink. And am I being reverential enough, Pastor?
You are,
Pastor
absolutely,
Fink?
absolutely. I appreciate it too.
I'm sure you do. Because you and your...
And you're Rabbi Taffet.
Only when I do the Jewish Music Hour. I do
Okay.
give up that title, just like I gave up the title of Polka David.
Okay.
Now that I'm not doing the polka show anymore. One piece on the entertainment report, but I think it's a real interesting little story. 2 and a half men. For their last season next year, John Cryer and Ashton Kutcher are going to get married.
Oh, cool. That's exciting.
Now, it's not going to be because they're suddenly gay. They're not gay, and the premise is that Ashton Kutcher's character would like to raise a child he wants to adopt, and it's not easy for a straight white guy to adopt, but it's easier for a couple to adopt. Gay groups aren't thrilled with this.
Right.
They don't like the idea of devaluing, and when I say they, I disagree on this one, but I've heard this, where you're devaluing a gay relationship and gay marriage by saying I'm getting married for other reasons. There was that movie, I forgot what it was called.
Well, it's done all the time with people getting green cards. They have different purpose.
Straight marriages, yeah,
Straight
of course.
Yep.
There was a movie, though, where this couple got married. 2 men got married, but it was for the benefits, for like the health insurance.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
But this thing about a couple getting married to raise a child, the way the producers of the show are talking about it, it's going to be respectful. That they're getting married for the right reasons. They want to create a family. They want to raise a child in a good environment, and so the two of them end up getting married. Not because they love each other, not because they're suddenly gay. They did not turn gay. The part about devaluing a relationship, though, I'm not sure how I feel about. I don't agree with that because, like you said, people get married for a whole variety of reasons.
Sure.
And getting married to raise a child is a good reason.
And people don't get married for good reasons too. I mean, if it's more advantageous for a couple, in terms of say their elder pension benefits or whatever, maybe they don't get married. But it's what works for them. And so some people for very good reasons don't get married, and some people for very great reasons get married.
Did
So
you see the?
I think it's all fine.
Did you see the finale of Boston Legal?
No.
James Spader and Captain Kirk decided to get married because William Shatner's character had Alzheimer's. James and the two of them throughout the show, they date. They never had relationships with anybody, but the two of them were best friends, and they wanted to get married so that James Spader's character would have legal control and all that stuff that you have when you get married to take care of William Shatner's character.
Oh, wow. And of course, I never watched the show, but I assume it's in Boston.
It is in
and
Boston.
You can get married in Boston.
Well, and this was much earlier. I think it was really when they were the only state. Maybe Connecticut had already adopted same-sex marriage, but there was just 1 or 2 states at the time. Well, in the story, they're taken to court by a gay group to prevent them from getting married, and James Spader was explaining to the jury in a very nice way, we don't have to have a sexual relationship, but I want to take care of him, and I do love him. And it was really beautifully done, I thought. And they were, again, arguing, well, you get married for different reasons. You don't have to get married because you want to have children. I mean, it was debunking that whole...
Yeah.
Marriage is just for procreation. Every gay couple that gets married is not marrying for procreation. Well, in this one, in 2 and a half men, it'll be so that they can raise a child, which it's done right. And from what I've read, they're sensitive to the issue. They're not making fun of same-sex marriage at all.
And Ashton Kutcher has been a long-time ally of us for our equality.
Right.
But we're talking about this, in fact, when we're preparing for the wedding and such. That gay couples, and I think this is very true for many of the couples who've been long-term couples here in Dallas, Fort Worth, and in North Texas that we've had on the show and others, that in a way, when you've been together a really long time, gay couples, I think, have figured out how to do it better, in fact, than straight couples, because of all of the obstacles and the weight of prejudice against you and the denial of rights and the advantages and privileges that you don't have because you're not married.
There's that new study that's out. I want to talk about that in a minute. Just one last thing about this. You know how the right-wing groups are going to use this against us? And I guess this is what bothers me.
What?
Okay, the whole idea is going to be, well, it's harder for this single straight man to get a child, to adopt a child, than it is for a couple. You see, you gay people, you have, it's gay privileges. You have extra rights.
These straight people can adopt these kids too.
Well, but that's the premise of the show, that he couldn't adopt. Especially, I know in Texas the way it works. I can't talk for California, but I know in Texas, you're a single person and you want to adopt a child, especially from CPS. Just take the classes. You do your foster care, and if that child becomes available for adoption in 6 months, you got them. They are delighted.
Well,
straight,
speaking of,
gay, single, married.
I'm not sure we were ready to talk about this on the show, but I think that's a great segue to talk about what Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins was speaking about on Tuesday evening at the Stonewall Democrats of Dallas meeting. Mm-hmm. And that is, we as a county, as a state, as human beings, we're in Dallas County, we're going to be taking in at least 2,000 of those 58,000 kids that have been migrated across the border as refugees to get away from violence and probably slave labor. If they were to go back, they're getting auctioned off at the airport to different gangs and such.
As bad as anybody thinks it might be, this is why I want Clay on. As bad as anybody thinks it might be, you have to listen to somebody who just went, looked at the situation, was shown what's going on. It's 10 times worse. So if you think it was bad, now I know we have listeners who are out there who are screaming at their radios right now, no, close the borders, but and to all of you, there are 62 other radio stations. Our station isn't in that camp.
Right.
But if you're open at all to the idea that, well, maybe if some of these children are in a bad situation, and if you're even from Clay's description, from what he saw, and information that he's being given as the person anywhere in this country who has stepped up and said, I want to help, the one person. He expected all kinds of, when he said, yeah, we'll take 2,000, he expected, oh yeah, Houston will take 1,000, San Francisco will take a couple of thousand. Well, nobody. He said, yeah,
Now, Sheila Jackson Lee in Harris County has said that she wants to make sure.
She said, and they have an interest, and now San Diego has an interest,
and Governor Christie in New Jersey has an interest,
because
and maybe 1,000 kids, right?
Yeah. Well, with 50,000 kids here, if each state took 1,000, we'd be great.
Sure.
We're taking 2.
Yeah, 2,000. And if we do this well, I think it'll be could be a model for the country. But what's most important for our lives as Texans and supporting these kids is to get trained as foster parents, and it's easy to do. You can contact Child Protective Services, find out some information.
Jonathan's Place, Hope Cottage, all kinds of places give these classes.
Right, and they're open to LGBT foster homes statewide. And so
it's not that they're open to gay and lesbian foster homes and bisexual and transgender. It's that they're begging for them.
Yes,
they know that we make great foster parents.
And I was so proud of them, too, when they stepped up and spoke out against the horrific proposed law in Austin that would have prevented us from being foster parents. And they said, no, we need these homes, and they're good homes. But we need folks now to take these classes, get qualified, get certified, and take some of these 2,000 kids. That's the most important thing right now.
What Clay said, it was interesting because the question was, well, what can we do? And I think people were expecting an answer like, well, you can have a blanket drive, or you can, these
like
kids
pencils.
need pillows. Yeah, exactly. And he said, I need homes for these kids, and I need 2,000 homes, and I need them pretty quickly. He's not fooling around here. He's talking about kids who are coming out of violence. He said that if this was a group of Kurds, if it was a group of, any recognized group by the UN, these would be considered refugees. What they are is a group that's not considered a group, which is children.
Right.
And coming across the border, some of these kids are as young as 5. I can't imagine a 5-year-old making that, 1,500 miles from Guatemala to Texas, something like that.
And how many have died trying?
We don't know.
We don't know that.
We know that about
These are the kids that made it.
We know 52,000 have made it to here since last October. If 50,000 made it, I'm guaranteeing you an equal number didn't.
Oh, sure. And we're talking about from Central America through Mexico to get here. And, this is a humanitarian crisis. And I think that the LGBT community, where we can, we need to step up and help take care of these kids.
Yeah, there's no question. No question. But Clay wasn't asking for the little stuff.
No, he was asking for...
He made the big ask.
Make your home open.
Yeah. As far as parenting, there was a study that was done that showed, it was an Australian study, it showed that gays and lesbians make better parents than straight people. It completely, I love this study, completely debunks the nonsense that it's better to grow up with a mother and a father, and only a heterosexual couple can provide the right home. Showed that is bull.
And that's exactly what we're talking about that CPS opposed to. Because what they were going to do in Texas was say, if you're, quote, homosexual, you're automatically disqualified from being a foster parent or adoptive parent. And if you're heterosexual, then you're automatically qualified. And that's insane. That's insane. Because most of the kids in CPS today are kids who've been abused and neglected in heterosexual homes.
Right.
So to just immediately qualify them in full based upon their sexual orientation is insane.
I know two kids who were abused so badly by their mother when their adoptive fathers adopted them. It was because CPS was specifically looking for a home without a woman in it because these kids were so afraid of their mother. I mean, she didn't just, she spanked them. She abused them to the point where once they got out of the hospital and they were able to take these kids in, different kids have different situations, and they look for the right kid for the right home. And but what was interesting about this study was they weren't comparing gay parents, gay people who, one of the things my friend Gary always says is gay people don't go out, get drunk, and hire a surrogate.
It's so true.
But, in
the backseat of a car.
In the backseat of a car, right. But what a gay couple does is you think about it, you save for it, because whether it's something, even though CPS, you get all kinds of help, like the health insurance for the kid is paid for, basically. There are just all kinds of things that they do to help you through CPS. Or if it's an expensive surrogate situation, you're still going to spend money on this kid. It is expensive to raise a kid. We know that. Gay couples and singles who are having kids generally have them late 20s and 30s, or even older. This
older in life, though, than it used to be.
Yeah. This study doesn't compare that to the full range of straight people who have kids, including 15-year-olds who get knocked up in the back of a car. It compared 30-year-old gay couples and lesbian couples with 30-year-old heterosexual couples, and even comparing absolutely apples to apples, like the Mark Regnerus study in Austin.
Right,
he was comparing straight couples to kids who were raised by any person who had ever had a gay relationship at all during their life, usually coming from a straight home, and the home was a broken home because the parents were out having sex with other people. This compared 30-year-old or 35-year-old or whatever stable couples with gay stable couples. And gay people and lesbians came out ahead.
Well, and their kids.
The kids came out ahead.
Are
yes.
happier and healthier than their peers. That's what this showed. Children from same-sex families scored about 6% higher on general health and family cohesion. even when controlling for socio-demographic factors such as parents' education and household income. So, I mean, that's pretty amazing. It said on most health measures, including emotional behavior and physical functioning, there was no difference compared with children from the general population. So, but in those areas where, on general health and family cohesion, and I think that's interesting because we're so often accused of being kind of like fly-by-night, unstable, and yet family cohesion is the big thing that we score better on than children from straight couples.
There are probably a couple of reasons for this. One of the reasons could be that with a gay couple, when you're sharing duties, especially with raising a kid, you're going to do them more toward what the best qualities are in each of the people. Like if one of them is better with staying home with the kid, it's not that you're going to stay home with him because you're the mother. Right. You're going to stay home with him because you're the caregiver.
And that's what the study actually found. The study suggested that the greater social cohesion among same-sex families comes from an equal distribution of work. Same-sex couples are likely to share responsibilities more equally than heterosexual ones. And I think that it is in part just profoundly true. And I think it comes back to why couples do stay together so long against the odds when they're not protected by law. Because we understand we don't subscribe to those rigid gender roles that many heterosexual couples do, where he does the lawn, she does the dishes. That doesn't seem to happen. And because I think in our homes we understand that these things need to be done, let's divvy them up. Right. And sometimes people land the things they really like to do, but everybody has to do things they don't like because it needs to be done. And so I think that's really very cool that that it kind of highlights that as the reason.
We need to take a break in a minute. I found this little story I love. In Salem, Massachusetts, a Christian institution near Boston, it's called Gordon College, as a result of the Hobby Lobby ruling, well, they would like an exemption from the law right now because they would, in Massachusetts, they would like an exemption from the law because they want to be able to discriminate against gays and lesbians because it's their religious belief.
They're firmly held religious.
They're firmly held religious belief that they should be discriminating against some people. The mayor of Salem, her name is Kim Driscoll. She's signing on to a letter against offering an exemption to President Obama's executive order, which is coming up tomorrow. Is supposed to be when it's supposed to come out.
He's going to sign it tomorrow.
He's against that. So she's getting nonstop calls from people, who are against what she's doing. Some local, most from out of state. So what she's decided to do is thank you for calling, and I'm making a $5 donation in your name to the, to the North Shore Alliance of Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Youth. And I hope your donation makes a difference.
Oh, that's great.
Is that the best answer? And, good for her. You just turn something bad into something that's good.
It's like when we raised money when the bozos from Kansas.
Fred Phelps was here, right? We raised $11,000 for the Resource Center. Right. And thank you, Fred, for visiting. When are you coming again so that we can raise some more money?
I think they need it. They got a new ice maker. What do they need now?
You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Patty Fink, and we'll be back with more right after this.
Hey Texans, if you think it's hot out, imagine wearing a fur coat. Even with the windows rolled down, leaving your pet alone in the car for a few minutes can be deadly. Keep your pet safe and indoors with you. This message has been brought to you by the Humane Society of North Texas, saving lives since 1905.
This is Jason Wright from Dallas, and I listen to Lambda Week 89.3 KNON.
It has no religion.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Pastor Patty Fink. And we were just talking about this
religious exemption. They're seeking through the Hobby Lobby ruling.
Right.
But it's interesting really interesting segue to the executive order that President Obama plans to sign tomorrow. And if you've been following this, ENDA is really stalled in the House. the United States House of Representatives. It's passed the Senate as is, and it's just sitting there in the House with no action. There's been no action for years, but the enda that's sitting there is a really bad one, actually. And many groups now, many more have joined that withdrawing their support from this bill, because it includes such a huge kind of extraordinary exemption for religious belief.
That's now backed up by a Supreme Court ruling that
In Hobby Lobby.
With Hobby Lobby, right.
Now, some would say that the Supreme Court is not saying that you could extend this beyond birth control and those 4 forms of birth control.
That was in the ruling, but.
Yes, but.
But they did say it's firmly held religious belief.
Yep.
Well, this is my firmly held religious belief. And if you're saying, why is that one special?
Right. So, but what's happened now with the executive order that the president's going to sign tomorrow, it's going to affect, excuse me, it's going to do 2 things. One is that he's already issued an executive order, not a law. It's not a law, so the next occupant of the White House could just nix it all.
Well, or Congress could.
Or Congress could.
By passing something.
They could pass something that would be permanent law, but this is an executive order that's been in place since he took office, that there can be no discrimination in hiring, firing, promotion, all of those things in terms of employment for federal employees based upon sexual orientation. So this executive order tomorrow is going to add explicitly gender identity and expression. And so this executive order will also apply to all federal contractors. Excuse me. So if you're taking federal taxpayer dollars, and providing services to the federal government, then you have to have no discrimination against.
Which forces a company like Exxon to put it into their non-discrimination policies in the right place. They have it there, but it's in the wrong place, so it doesn't really apply if they were to be sued.
Well, and they say they don't discriminate, so they'll be against anybody. So
okay,
they don't need to
here's
say
what's
anything.
funny about them. I know of 2 cases, and one of them is the current case. It's brand new, basically, that's against AT&T, 100% score with HRC. It's the second case against them, but this is being brought under the new San Antonio non-discrimination ordinance. First complaint. I don't know of a complaint against Exxon from one of their employees.
Not recently.
Over years.
But in fact, I met a member of the wedding party in San Francisco who at one point in her career had been fired from Mobil Oil because she was gay.
And that's surprising because Mobil.
But this was many years ago.
And Mobil was one of the first companies. When I say one of the first, might not have been number 1, but it was in the top 5 that had non-discrimination for its employees.
And I don't know where in that timeline this occurred. I would assume before.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons we protest, is because Exxon uniquely in this country, other than Perot Systems, but Perot Systems has now come around.
Well, because they were bought by HP.
Right. It was pretty friendly to the LGBT community. But Exxon had taken away pre-existing protections and benefits, domestic partnership benefits that had been at Mobil. So, really the only company that has a negative score on the HRC Corporate Equality Index, which is hard to do.
It is hard to, well, it's very hard to do. But that's what's so interesting, that here's a company with 100%, and this is a pretty strong case against that company, and I don't know of any against the minus 25 company.
Yep.
Both of them based here, so we do hear about them, but...
We'll be interested to follow that AT&T case.
Yeah.
From San Antonio. Very interesting.
Their attorney will come on with us, and that one's actually a transgender case. Transgender discrimination. Yeah. So.
But back to this executive order, this will affect federal contractors. It will, of course, affect ExxonMobil. But there will be no extraordinary religious exemption in the executive order. So
what the mayor of Salem, Massachusetts, her letter that she signed, made a difference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this is going to be a really great thing. And, of course, the right wing is all, in a tizzy because they want that exemption. And I just think it's extraordinary that we talk about we hear these code words for discrimination. This guy who's with the National Association of Evangelicals says he expected the president's order would lead to a lengthy and expensive legal fight. So they're already preparing. Quote, "It would be better if the president could provide leadership that promotes tolerance all the way around, rather than use the force of the state." He further said that the exemption would have protected the group's freedom and, quote, "social harmony as our nation is working through these issues on which there's a lot of disagreement." Well, social harmony and tolerance, in his view, is discrimination. But he's calling it this social harmony. What he basically wants to say is, we would win. We would have our own social harmony, but those other people would be fired. That's what he would be saying.
Right. And nobody is forcing anybody in any church to do anything. We're just arguing whether or not corporations can have a religion.
Right.
And can impose can impose the religious beliefs of the owner of that corporation. So, Connecticut, there was a fascinating ruling this week.
I thought that was really extraordinary.
A Connecticut Supreme Court. Now, they were state 2 with marriage equality. A Connecticut Supreme Court ruling is adding to the debate on whether gay marriage rights should be applied retroactively and qualify same-sex couples for rights and benefits for which they weren't entitled before the state allowed them to get married. Now, here's what the ruling was about. They ruled Wednesday that a woman whose wife died amid a medical malpractice, she was diagnosed with one type of cancer. It was actually a different type of cancer, a very rare type, but it was a different type of cancer. So she was misdiagnosed. She died, and now the survivor wants to sue over the loss of her wife's companionship and income, even though in Connecticut the law was the only person who could sue was a spouse, or I guess children could also sue for that malpractice. This opens the door to all kinds of new legal claims, because what it's saying is, yeah, you did have rights, even though it kind of says it's our fault that you weren't married before. Not, well, sorry, you should have gotten married. You got married when you could. You've been together all these years. It's not like you're filing a malpractice suit for that person and, oh, gee, she died, now I'm with this one. It's, you were with that person for years, and we're acknowledging that. So your rights predate.
Exactly. And I think that's really interesting because one of the things we in this movement for equality that I think a lot of people don't get, or I think a lot of LGBT people even internalize it, the sort of homophobia, is that we are equal, period. It's man's law or man-made law that doesn't recognize our equality.
And that was one of the things.
We don't become equal by having a law. We are already equal to you.
And that's one of the analyses of this ruling. It said, I think what the court recognized is that constitutional rights don't spring into existence in one moment of time.
Right.
What happens in one moment of time is a court or a legislature recognizes that you have those rights, but Connecticut is saying, yeah, we got it wrong until now, and in certain cases, you know, if there's a lawsuit, if there are benefits, whatever, you can apply for them retroactively.
And I think that's really, really great that the state of Connecticut is saying, well, we were sort of arbitrary in picking a date, but your situation is clearly, predates our arbitrary date. So proceed.
Right. On May 23rd, 2006, not okay for you to be married, but May 24th, much better. It's silly. It's silly. And that is what they're saying. It's the first of its kind ruling. Nothing like this has ever been ruled before in any of these cases. So, fascinating.
It is. So it's really great.
You add that to Florida this week, where marriages will start unless the court stops it. Oklahoma ruling this week, which is a second case that is now being appealed to the Supreme Court from an appeals court. Even though there have been 20 rulings in our favor over the last year, only 2 of them have gone through the appeals process where they've actually issued a ruling that can now go to the Supreme Court. You have Colorado, where unfortunately now a higher court has stepped in to stop their marriages because they started them and it was spreading across the state. horror of horrors, a whole bunch of people getting married, and a bad one in Utah. The Supreme Court ruled in Utah this week that the state does not have to recognize the marriages that went on for about 2 weeks in between the time Utah was ruled on in December and in January when Sotomayor put a stay on those marriages.
Right.
Now, what's happened in the meantime is the federal government has said if you got married, we'll recognize those. Utah even allowed couples this year to file joint taxes if they were married in the previous year.
And that's I think that's perfectly appropriate.
Of course it is. They were saying basically you're going to have to file a joint tax for federal, so we need that joint tax amount on your state tax, so therefore just file. But they were being reasonable about it. Then they went to court and say, no, we don't want to be reasonable about it anymore, and so they don't have to. So what it does, this ruling is only for Utah, but it could affect Indiana and Michigan and Colorado and
Oklahoma.
No, there were no Oklahoma marriages, though.
Right. Okay.
I'm only talking about the states. There were 4 states where
there were sort of interim.
There were some interim
marriages.
Could happen in Florida this coming week.
Yep.
if people go run down to Florida to get married. So, what's so funny about these rulings? It's where can we go get married this week?
And I think it's really cool that they're, Boulder, Colorado is one of those places that's almost like San Francisco in terms of its, we're going to do this, And the county clerk there, who's been issuing licenses, has been told not to do so anymore. And
she's the one who
spearheaded and said, "I'm doing them. I'm giving out the licenses. They're getting married." And I think it's really cool when people like that are in that position. It's really great.
The other interesting one, and we mentioned this on last week's show, is Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, there was a pro-marriage ruling. The governor, who is Republican, he said, well, we'll accept the court's ruling. They were the next state. If you start at Maine and come down the eastern seaboard, they were the next state.
Yeah, because we already had Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, and actually Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island.
And New York. So everything attached in that direction, New Jersey also now, and then going down the eastern seaboard, you have Maryland. So everything on the eastern seaboard down to Maryland has marriage equality. Except Pennsylvania. They accepted the ruling. I think they kind of figured, so they'll go to the next state and get married. What's the difference? We're losing out on money, and for this Republican governor who's up for re-election, he knew it was going to lose him votes. Interesting change of events anyway, there was a county clerk in one of the rural counties who, it's against her religion, so she took it, and she's been told by the Supreme Court, and it was Alito who stopped her, who said she did not have standing in the case.
Great. Well, that's very
So
interesting.
Alito said she didn't have standing in the case, can't appeal what the governor is doing, but Sotomayor stopped marriages in now Colorado and Utah. That's kind of backwards.
Yeah, but I think it's all poised to get really clean rulings. For example, the Texas case, I think, is kind of messy. It really isn't the most ideal kind of case, but and yet Greg Abbott has put in for 2 extensions, and now I think it's now a third.
Because he can't come up with an argument against.
He can't respond and do the appeal.
And every time he comes up with a new one, somebody rules on that and shows him what an idiot he is.
So now he has another extension. I think it's gone until the end of next month or the end of this month, which will be his 3rd extension to the court, because he says he wants to appeal the ruling from Judge Orlando Garcia, the federal ruling there. So he wants to appeal it so that it can make its way to the 5th Circuit and all of that, but he won't file anything. And I think you're right. I think it's because he doesn't have anything to put on paper.
He needs to figure out, well, what are we going to argue?
Maybe we could just drive around and look for a reason.
They don't make parents. Well, then why in your state do you allow gay adoptions? Right. That's the reasonable question. Well, we shouldn't. Well, then why did CPS in your state say they should?
It's really kind of amusing to see him kind of grasp for something to put on that paper. Mm-hmm. So it's gonna be...
And before the hour is up and we only have a couple of minutes, one thing we have to talk about is that plane that went down.
Oh, yeah.
100 AIDS researchers were killed on that plane. 100, including one of the foremost experts. His name is Yop Lang. He's the one responsible, basically, for the AIDS medication cocktail and antiretrovirals.
Yeah, it's a brain trust that just went down in that explosion.
When the Russians and their clients in eastern Ukraine shot that plane down, and let's just be honest, who did it?
Right.
It was a Russian missile. We know that. They weren't just killing about 300 people on that plane. They're possibly killing thousands of other people with the loss of all these researchers.
With the true brain trust of AIDS research in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many, journeying to this conference in Australia. And
I mean, they are literally
lost.
killing thousands of people.
Yep.
Because
on all continents.
like you're saying, it could be millions of people, right? It could be millions of people.
Because those were the very people who were at the forefront, at the bleeding edge of new research, new ideas to defeat this virus.
I mean, I had a couple of different articles that I had pulled up. These are the heads of a number of AIDS organizations around the world, or mostly in Europe, because they were going from Amsterdam to, so a number of AIDS organizations in Europe, the head of the organization killed. But the researcher, it's just,
It's devastating.
And that's not to say that the other people who were killed on the plane, I'm not at all minimizing their deaths either, but these people, what they could discover.
And what they were on the brink of discovering.
It's going to cost in AIDS research a decade at least to get new people into these positions, caught up to where they were, and do the research. How many people? Oh.
And the ripple from the loss of their lives is enormous.
It's huge. It's huge. It's just unspeakable.
Yeah.
So anyway, to end on that note.
Well, gay marriage equality is advancing.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
I'm Dave Taffet here with the late Pastor Patty Fink, and we'll be back with more Lambda Weekly next week.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.